Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Joshua Holden returned from a quick grocery run, he didn't expect to find strangers inside his home, let alone from an HOA he never joined. What began as a bizarre intrusion spiraled into a suburban war of lies, legal battles, and one man's fight for his freedom and front lawn. When I pulled into my driveway that afternoon, I wasn't expecting to see a silver Honda Civic parked half on my lawn, half on the gravel. I wasn't expecting anything, really. I'd only been gone for about 55 minutes. Quick grocery run, nothing major. The sun was still in the same spot when I left, my fridge just slightly fuller. That was the plan. In and out. No drama. What I did not plan for was walking into my house and finding 3 complete strangers standing in my kitchen. 2 of them wore matching navy blue polos embroidered with the words Crescent Trails HOA Compliance Division. The third, a woman in a sharp beige blazer and an expression like she'd just licked battery acid, looked me straight in the eye and said, as if I was the one interrupting her, "This will only take a moment, sir. We're conducting an interior compliance check." I froze in the doorway, grocery bags still dangling from my fingers, one apple rolling out across the floor. "I'm sorry. What the hell are you doing in my house?" The woman gave a tight-lipped smile that didn't touch her eyes. "We received an anonymous complaint about structural irregularities and possible unauthorized interior modifications. Under HOA Protocol Article 8, Subsection C, we are permitted to inspect properties under suspicion of—" "Stop," I cut in, heat already climbing up my spine. "I'm not part of the HOA. You have zero authority here." That smile again, smug as it was professional. "Actually, sir, your property was provisionally mapped under the Crescent Trails expansion back in 2019. The map was updated last year." "No," I said flatly. "My deed is clean. I specifically bought this house outside of your little suburban cult for a reason." The 2 polo-wearing stooges exchanged a glance, one of them holding up a tablet and pretending to take pictures of my light fixtures. The other had already wandered halfway down the hallway, his radio crackling softly on his hip. That's when I realized they'd broken in. My front door was still locked when I got here, no windows smashed, so how the hell did they get in? "You forced entry?" I asked, stepping fully inside, heart pounding. "How did you even get in here?" The woman, blazer, heels, arrogance, pulled out a folded sheet of paper and held it toward me. "This is a Code 6 emergency notice, giving us access in the event of suspected safety violations. A neighbor reported strong odors, dangerous wiring, and loud mechanical noises. We logged the report and acted within the time frame allowed by municipal bylaw." I didn't take the paper. "That's not a legal warrant. That's a cheap template you printed off your office LaserJet. You can challenge it later, sir. Right now, we're just documenting the findings." "Get out," I said. My voice was quieter than I expected. "All of you. Right now." The taller of the 2 men opened a cupboard under my sink, pulled out a measuring tape like he thought he was on Property Brothers. "You realize your water lines are unshielded here?" "I realize you're trespassing," I snapped. "This is private property. I've got cameras. I'm calling the cops." Blazer lady, later I'd find out her name was Karen Westbrook, naturally didn't blink. "We've already notified Precinct Control that we're conducting a community service operation under HOA inspection privilege." "Yeah? Great. Then let's all wait here for the actual cops and see what they think of that." I grabbed my phone, hit record, and scanned the room with the camera. "Smile," I muttered. "You're all gonna look fantastic in court." Karen didn't smile, but she did fold her arms like she was the offended party, as if I'd just tracked mud on her floor. One of the men tried to keep filming with his tablet until I marched over and shoved it out of my face. "Out, now." 15 minutes later, 2 officers from Austin PD showed up. One of them I'd seen before at the farmer's market. The shorter one asked for IDs. Karen launched into a long explanation about civic responsibilities, shared interest enforcement, and how technically my house was within the expanded HOA interest radius. I handed over my deed, printed, highlighted, with footnotes just to be petty. The cop scanned the papers, then looked at me. "This is outside the HOA, by several hundred feet." Karen's face went rigid. She wasn't used to being wrong, definitely not in public. I asked if the officers could remove them from my home. They obliged. The 2 polo guys left first, still muttering something about non-compliant fixtures. Karen lingered just long enough to hiss on her way out. "You're making a very unwise enemy, Mr. Holden." I waited until the door shut behind them before I let out the breath I'd been holding since I walked in. I picked up the apple from the floor and set it gently on the counter. My house felt violated, like someone had come in and touched things they had no right to touch. Because, well, they had. I spent the next hour installing 2 new deadbolts, one on the front, one on the back. Then I opened my laptop and started a file labeled HOA Invasion Legal Evidence. Something told me I was going to need it. The first envelope showed up the next morning. No stamp. Just a plain white business envelope shoved halfway into my mailbox like someone hadn't even bothered to try. Inside was a tri-folded letterhead from the Crescent Trails Homeowners Association, marked Final Warning in red capital letters. It listed 3 supposed violations: non-compliant front elevation design, improper ground covering, and my personal favorite, unauthorized architectural extension, which I could only assume meant my carport. The notice demanded I take corrective action within 10 days or face fines of $700 per violation per week, effective immediately. They also graciously provided a QR code to a payment portal, as if I'd just click it and tip my captors for the privilege of being extorted. I stood there reading the paper in my driveway, coffee in one hand, this HOA acid trip in the other, and felt my jaw tightening with every word. The nerve. They had trespassed into my house yesterday, been escorted out by police, and less than 24 hours later, they were already back. But this time, on paper. I didn't even throw the letter away. I went straight inside, opened the file I'd started the night before, scanned the whole thing, and labeled it fraudulent fine. Then I sat down and called a lawyer, Samantha Pineda, Real Estate and Property Rights. Highly recommended by a friend who'd once sued a condo board so badly they changed their entire charter. Her office was surprisingly relaxed. Plants, jazz music, 0 marble busts of justice. But she didn't smile much, which I liked. After a brief rundown, she sighed, cracked her knuckles, and said, "Welcome to the HOA Hunger Games. You'd be shocked how often these lunatics try to absorb independent homes to pad their budget. Crescent Trails is notorious for this. So I'm not the first. God, no. But they're getting bolder, especially this Karen Westbrook woman. She thinks she's running the city. Good news is, you're clearly not under their jurisdiction. You've got the survey, title, land record, the whole 9 yards. This notice is laughable legally. Then what's their play? Psychological warfare. If you were older, had a family, health issues, odds are you'd cave. It's cheaper to submit than to fight. Well, they picked the wrong guy. I have no kids, no pets, no patients, and I work from home." She smiled for the first time. "Then let's make this fun." Samantha drafted a cease and desist notice by the afternoon. Not just a casual lawyer letter either. This one cited the Texas Property Code, relevant Supreme Court precedent, and finished with a phrase I especially liked. "Further action on your part will constitute harassment and will be treated as such in civil court." We emailed it, printed it, certified mailed it, and for good measure, I slid a copy under the HOA office door myself. I even signed it with a Sharpie. That night, I installed 2 more cameras, one above the garage, one at the back fence, just in time. By the next morning, someone had left a second envelope in my mailbox. This one was unsigned, hand-scrawled, and weirdly threatening. "Keep your trash off your lawn. Some of us like living in a clean neighborhood." Trash? I don't even own trash cans. I keep them in the garage until pickup. I walked around outside, checking for anything suspicious, and found nothing. But the feeling stayed with me, the sense that eyes were on me. Then came the slow burn harassment. Within 3 days, I received 4 additional notices, each more ludicrous than the last. One accused me of excessive wind chime volume. I don't even own wind chimes. Another cited non-regulation mailbox design, even though it was the same ugly black steel box that came with the house. My favorite, though, was the one that accused me of failing to landscape the perimeter hedge in accordance with community aesthetics. I live on a dead end with a cedar fence. There's no hedge. There's no perimeter. Each notice came with a fine. Each fine came with a payment demand, and every time I sent them to Samantha, she'd reply with some variation of, "Beautiful. That's going in the file." It would have been funny, almost, if it weren't for the new dent in my truck bumper one morning. Looked like a grocery cart, maybe. No note, no camera angle on the hit. Just one more passive-aggressive jab. Then there were the signs. On Wednesday morning, taped to my front door, "Compliance a community. Be a good neighbor." On Thursday, "You live here now. Act like it." And on Friday, a flyer on my windshield. Non-compliance impacts resale values. You are not exempt. I'd officially moved from annoyed to watched, and I hated that feeling more than anything. I'd worked too damn hard to buy a home outside of suburban tyranny, only to have it claw its way to my front door like a smiling, blazer-wearing parasite. But Samantha was on it. She'd started pulling tax lot records, HOA registration filings, and the original zoning blueprints. The best part? In one of the old maps, my entire street was grayed out with a handwritten note, "Potential annexation denied by City Planning Board 2019. They had tried this before and failed, but this time they were trying to fake it. Bypass the process, use paperwork as a weapon, and confusion as cover. I wasn't going to let that slide. Saturday started with a drone, not the metaphorical kind, an actual black quadcopter humming above my backyard like a bored hornet. I was halfway through replacing a loose panel on my deck when the sound crept into my ears. At first, I thought it was just a neighbor's toy until it hovered in place for a little too long, then tilted forward to stare directly into my kitchen window. I stood there, hands on my hips, watching it watch me. I gave it the finger just to see what would happen. It zipped away 2 seconds later, shooting back toward Crescent Trails like a spy retreating to its nest. 10 minutes later, I got a notification. Someone had posted about me on Nextdoor. I didn't have an account. I value sanity. But Samantha did. She sent me a screenshot. Unstable man living off Cedar View Drive has been aggressive with HOA officials and refuses to maintain his property. Be cautious. Keep children and pets away. Authorities have been informed. Attached was a blurry photo of my house taken from the side at dusk, making it look like a haunted drug den. Someone had even darkened the image and added a fake timestamp overlay. It was laughably amateur and yet effective. Within hours, a Facebook group popped up, Crescent Trails United. I didn't join, but friends sent me screenshots. It was full of posts blaming me for lowering home values, creating unsafe conditions, and my personal favorite, possibly hoarding large amounts of scrap metal. I didn't even own a wrench set. One post claimed I'd aggressively shouted at a local child who walked near my driveway. I had security footage from that exact morning. The only child I'd seen was a kid on a scooter 2 houses down, and I'd waved at him. But the post gained 37 likes in an hour. People believe whatever fits their worldview. Karen was winning the public narrative. By Tuesday, 2 more signs appeared near my mailbox, professionally printed this time. One said, "Respect community standards, report violations." The other just had a phone number with "Compliance Hotline" in bold. Cute. That same day, a woman I didn't recognize knocked on my door with a clipboard and a fake smile. She introduced herself as Elaine from Neighborhood Engagement and asked if I'd be willing to attend a community harmony roundtable. No joke, that was the actual name. "Karen sent you." She blinked. "I'm just here to foster unity." "Get off my property." She left without another word, but not before scribbling something on her clipboard like I'd failed a behavior test. That night, I heard gravel crunching. When I checked the camera, someone had thrown eggs at my front window. The quality was too low to get a face, but the posture was familiar. Teenage, thin, hood up, amateur hour. But again, effective, because I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk, rewatching the footage, clicking between tabs, reading comments from strangers calling me a danger to their neighborhood, a neighborhood I wasn't part of. On Wednesday, Samantha called with news. They're spreading something nastier now. She'd found fake HOA meeting minutes posted online, suggesting that my street had voted to join Crescent Trails back in 2020. She cross-referenced them with the real city records, which, of course, showed no such thing. "They're faking documents," she said. "We'll hit that hard soon. But I'm worried about something else. The Municipal Utilities Board just approved a work order for your street." "For what?" "Storm drain alignment. But guess who filed the request? Karen, through HOA channels. There's an active excavation request tied to your property line." My stomach dropped. "You're saying they're going to dig on my land?" "Not officially. Not yet. But they're inching toward a scenario where they create emergency infrastructure access. And if you resist, they paint you as the obstruction." Jesus Christ. That same day, I met Scott. He lived 3 houses down, ex-military, steel gray hair, and a voice like gravel in a coffee can. He caught me while I was refilling birdseed, real American meet cute, and said, "You're the guy Karen's after." I braced myself. Guilty. "You're not alone," he said. "They tried this crap with me 4 years ago. I told them I'd rather drink bleach than pay HOA dues. She backed off, but now she's on a power trip. I offered him a beer on the spot. Scott became my first ally. That night, we sat on my porch, and he laid it all out. How Karen rose through the HOA board by ousting anyone who disagreed. How she used a network of passive-aggressive retirees and overzealous moms to report violations. How she weaponized city connections like favors owed from years of community projects. She's got roots," he said, "but she overreaches, and people are getting tired of her. We decided to fight back the only way these people seem to understand, with our own group. I created a website the next day, notyourhoa.com. Black background, white text. No frills, just my story, the legal documents, timelines, and a downloadable PDF of the city zoning map showing my house comfortably outside the HOA boundaries. I titled it, How to Not Get Owned by Suburban Fascists, a Guide. By the weekend, it had over 3,000 hits. Karen didn't know it yet, but she'd picked the wrong ghost to haunt. The shift happened fast. One day, I was the paranoid guy with too many cameras and a chip on his shoulder. The next, I was the man with a website and a stack of scanned evidence turning heads across the county. Not Your HOA caught fire. Local Reddit threads lit up. Someone posted it in a Facebook group for Austin homeowners. Then a small YouTube channel picked it up for a suburban tyranny special. Within 72 hours, I had emails from 5 other homeowners in neighboring developments. One of them had been fined for unauthorized flower pots. Another had been threatened with foreclosure over a windmill lawn ornament. Apparently, I'd become a lightning rod for HOA abuse survivors. Scott and I held our first meeting under the carport on Friday night. 6 folding chairs, a cooler full of beer, 3 neighbors I'd never talked to before, and 1 woman from the next block over who brought lemon bars and a terrifying amount of documentation. She was a retired paralegal named Sharon. When she spoke, everyone listened. We called ourselves the Independent Homeowners Collective. I'd suggested the Bastards Club, but was vetoed on branding concerns. We made a plan. First, visibility. We needed to move from internet curiosity to real-world presence. Second, pressure. Not physical, but legal, public, and relentless. Third, exposure. If HOA leadership thrived on intimidation and opacity, then sunlight was our weapon. The next week, I filed a formal complaint with the Austin City Clerk's office, backed by Samantha and 2 new signees from our block. The document cited municipal overreach through false HOA jurisdiction, attached maps, dates, and the cease and desist that Karen's team still hadn't acknowledged. Samantha added a supplemental note referencing possible regulatory fraud. But that was just step 1. Step 2 was my favorite, the sign war. We printed 100-yard signs, black background, bold white text, not your HOA. Below, in smaller print, private property, not subject to Crescent Trails regulations. And then, my proudest addition, not your HOA. We posted them in every yard we had consent from. Mine, Scott's, Sharon's. 3 more houses down the block. People started noticing. People started asking. Karen noticed too. That Saturday, I found one of our signs snapped in half and thrown into my trash can. I checked the camera feed. It was the same woman who'd shown up with the clipboard a week earlier. Elaine, the engagement coordinator. I sent the footage to Samantha. She called it exhibit material. Then came the HOA's next move. A certified letter arrived. Heavy envelope, gold seal, and enough legalese to put a law professor to sleep. It was a community integrity mediation demand, claiming that my signage was sowing discord, violating visual harmony, and damaging community cohesion. They even included a clause citing a Neighborhood Unity Act, which turned out to be completely made up. Samantha laughed so hard she choked on her coffee. They're quoting fictional legislation now. This is magnificent. I posted the letter online. Within hours, it went viral. Buzz began to spread. Then it went local. KXTX News 5 reached out. Their producer asked if I'd be willing to go on air for a segment about homeowner rights and HOA overreach. I said sure, as long as they didn't bleep me too much. They sent a crew on Tuesday. I gave the interview under my now famous sign with Scott in the background pretending not to pose. I talked about trespassing, the fines, the social media smears, and most of all, the lies. I ended the segment with a single line. I bought this house specifically because it was outside HOA control. They broke into it anyway. That's not community. That's conquest. It aired Thursday night. By Friday, HOA's phones were swamped. 3 local city council members issued public statements saying they were investigating claims of overreach. A legal watchdog group requested access to Crescent Trail's zoning documentation. And, best of all, Karen's name started trending on Twitter. Not in a flattering way. Karen panicked. That evening, I got a letter hand-delivered by a private courier, Karen's signature at the bottom. It was a formal invitation to sit down for conflict resolution in the HOA boardroom. No mention of previous violations, no reference to trespassing, just a polite, desperate-sounding request to talk. I didn't respond. Instead, I doubled down. That weekend, I hosted a barbecue for all non-HOA property owners in the area. We called it the Freedom Cookout. No rules, no dress codes, no permitted grill styles. We had a bounce house and a live mariachi band. Someone brought fireworks. The cops didn't show up, but a local journalist did. When she asked what the party was for, I said, just celebrating the fact that we own our homes. That's it. Simple pleasure. Karen was watching. Her SUV drove past twice that night. Slow. Headlights off. She didn't stop. The courthouse smelled like furniture polish and disappointment. I showed up for the hearing 10 minutes early, wearing the only suit I owned, gray, a little snug around the shoulders, and 100% bought for job interviews that never panned out. Samantha, as always, looked like she could eat a Chevron executive alive and still have room for dessert. She carried a leather briefcase that weighed more than most toddlers and walked like she owned the building. Karen arrived with her own legal shark, a woman named Linda Norton in a navy skirt suit and blood-red lipstick. Linda had the vibe of someone who billed by the hour and charged double for eye contact. They looked smug, like they'd already won. I wasn't nervous. I was furious. The courtroom wasn't big, wood-paneled walls, old Texas flag hanging limp in the corner, a judge with a nameplate that read D. Lambert and an expression that said, I've seen way worse than this HOA crap, so don't try me today. The case was officially titled Crescent Trails HOA v. Joshua Holden, and beneath it, civil action to determine community jurisdiction and enforcement eligibility. In plain English, the HOA was trying to convince a judge that they had the right to enforce their rules on my property because past planning, intentions, and unofficial annexation momentum somehow gave them legal standing. Karen's team opened with maps, color-coded zones, copies of newsletters from 3 years ago where Crescent Trails mentioned a potential future expansion. They even brought a list of signatures from residents who supported the inclusion of my street. Most of those people didn't even live on my block. Samantha let them talk. Then she stood up, opened her briefcase, and pulled out the map. The actual legally binding city-registered zoning map. Black and white, stamped, signed. My street? Clearly marked outside of the HOA boundary, not shaded, not annexed, not included. Then she brought out the kicker, the transcript from a 2019 City Planning Board meeting where the very proposal to annex my street had been reviewed and rejected, voted down 3-2. Karen's face started to twitch. Linda objected on procedural grounds. Judge Lambert raised one eyebrow so high I thought it might leave orbit. Samantha continued. She presented the cease and desist letter from our file, the municipal complaint, then our ace. She played an audio clip. Karen's voice, crystal clear, from one of the camera feeds Samantha had extracted and cleaned up. Just get in. Don't worry about the door. He's not home. We'll say it was an emergency check. We'll fix the paperwork later. Karen's jaw dropped. Linda tried to object. The judge waved her off. That's you on tape, Lambert asked, turning toward Karen. Karen blinked, opened her mouth, then closed it again. Samantha looked at me and smiled like a wolf who just heard dinner squeak. We rested our case. Then something unexpected happened. The judge didn't immediately rule. Instead, he said, there's enough here for injunctive relief. I'm issuing a temporary restraining order against Crescent Trails HOA. No contact, no correspondence, no access to the defendant's property until this matter is fully resolved. Final judgment pending review of all exhibits. It wasn't a full win, yet, but it was blood drawn. Karen stormed out of the courtroom before we even stood up. Linda stayed, fiddling with her tablet as if she could listen to the entire hearing. Outside, the sun was stupidly bright. Samantha put her sunglasses on like she was walking away from an explosion. I bought her a breakfast taco the size of my forearm, and we celebrated in the parking lot. "We rattled them," she said. "Now they'll get desperate." She wasn't wrong. By the time I got home, someone had left a fresh HOA violation notice on my front door, unsigned of course, accusing me of public endangerment through unapproved media activity. Apparently giving interviews was now a zoning violation. I laughed, tore it in half, and fed it to my garbage disposal. Later that night, Scott and Sharon came over with a bottle of bourbon and a stack of barbecue ribs. We sat around the fire pit and toasted to temporary restraining orders, which isn't how most people spend their weekends, but felt just right. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done. She'd lost the courtroom battle, but she wasn't the type to go quietly. And desperate people do stupid things. It started with a truck. Big, yellow, loud. I woke up on Wednesday to the sound of heavy equipment rumbling just beyond my bedroom window. At first, I thought maybe the city was repaving the main road again, but when I looked outside, my stomach turned to stone. They were digging up my damn front yard. A construction crew in fluorescent vests had parked a backhoe on my grass and was jackhammering into the soil near the main water line. A man with a clipboard walked around barking orders, and an orange work zone sign had been staked right into the middle of my flower bed, like it was public property. I threw on pants and ran outside barefoot. "What the hell are you doing?" The clipboard guy barely looked up. "Storm drain access, sir. City work order. Should have been on your notice." "There was no notice," I snapped. "This is private property." He shrugged and waved vaguely toward a folder on his truck dashboard. "Filed under emergency review by the Crescent Trails Infrastructure Committee. Ask them." "Of course, Karen." I stormed back into the house and called Samantha. Her voice was sharp, clipped. "Already heard about it. You're not the only one. 2 other properties along your street, both non-HOA, got the same treatment this morning. It's coordinated. They're calling it city work. Sort of. Karen filed a maintenance request to the Municipal Utilities Department 3 weeks ago, claimed urgent drainage alignment needed to prevent flood risk. Pushed it through a compliance loophole. If it affects public flow systems, they can authorize exploratory digging without homeowner consent. And they just believed her? She attached fake engineering assessments. No one at city planning verified them. It's fraud, but hard to prove without internal access. I stood there, watching a guy in a hard hat casually toss dirt into a plastic wheelbarrow on my land, and felt like screaming. "Can we stop it?" "Only if you get an emergency injunction today. I'll start the filing, go take photos, video, timestamp everything." I hung up and filmed everything. Close-ups, wide shots, even a selfie with the chaos behind me for court proof. The workers ignored me. One of them even asked if I had a hose they could use. While this was happening, Karen had the audacity to post on Nextdoor, "So proud of our HOA for stepping up and protecting the neighborhood from future flooding. Sometimes leadership means making hard decisions." Community first. She posted it with a picture of my torn-up lawn like it was some kind of civic improvement project. By noon, local news vans were on the street again, not because of me this time, but because someone else had called them. Sharon. God bless that paralegal maniac. She stood in front of her own house giving a righteous impromptu press conference while Karen's goons dug a shallow trench nearby. "We are under siege," she said. "This is the illusion of governance. These people are not public servants. They're mall cops with clipboards and egos." Her soundbite aired that evening. It was glorious. Meanwhile, Samantha filed for a temporary restraining order against the city's contractor, citing trespass, property damage, and fraudulent cause. A judge reviewed the complaint by 5 that afternoon and signed off. Work had to stop. Immediately. The crew looked confused when police showed up. One of them asked if he could at least fill the hole back in. An officer said, "You can do that on his instruction, or you can leave right now." They left. The hole remained. My front yard looked like a crime scene. But the damage wasn't just physical. Karen had gone nuclear, and it wasn't just about me anymore. That night, I hosted another meeting of the Independent Homeowners Collective. We packed 8 people under my carport. Scott brought folding chairs. Sharon brought court forms. One neighbor, Alan, brought a stack of papers he found buried in city records, a breakdown of Crescent Trail's infrastructure expansion plans for the next fiscal year. There it was. Line 74. Projected phase adverts to stormwater reroute, informal, contingent on annexation compliance. They were trying to build through us. That's when I had an idea. Wait, I said. If their project depends on annexation, what if we hit them in the wallet? I spent the next 2 days digging, no pun intended, through municipal loan records, bond filings, and zoning applications. And I found it. Crescent Trails had leveraged part of their land value in exchange for a commercial loan with a regional bank. The note wasn't just collateralized on their office building. It included speculative value on the land they planned to annex, including mine. It was a gamble. I called Samantha. What happens if I buy that loan? She went silent. Then, that would make you their creditor. Technically, you think it's doable. I think it's genius. By the end of the week, I had a meeting scheduled with a bank official who didn't yet know what a wild ride he was in for. Karen had bulldozed my lawn. I was about to bulldoze her financing. Banks are funny things. They'll lend you $500,000 to buy a house, but hesitate when you try to spend $5,000 out of spite. The meeting took place in a sterile glass office above a branch off I-35. The guy I spoke with, Robert, mid-40s, tired eyes, khakis too clean, read through the documents I brought, sipping his lukewarm coffee with suspicion. "So, you're looking to buy out a commercial lien?" he asked. "Correct. From Crescent Trails HOA. Loan issued last March, backed by speculative collateral tied to future development parcels, most of which they don't legally own." He raised an eyebrow. "You're saying they used land they didn't have jurisdiction over as leverage?" "Bingo." He didn't say anything for a minute, just flipped through the pages, checking parcel numbers. Then he set the file down. "This is going to piss someone off." I smiled. "That's the goal." A week later, the sale closed. I paid more than I should have, but not so much that it felt stupid. The moment the paperwork cleared, I officially became a creditor to the Crescent Trails HOA. Their loan was now my note. They owed me money. And in the terms of that loan was a clause. In the event of jurisdictional dispute over pledged collateral, lender reserves right to call the loan for full repayment within 30 calendar days. I sent the demand notice that afternoon. Karen didn't reply, but 2 days later, I got a call from a very nervous HOA treasurer named Jeff. "We didn't know that land wasn't legally annexed," he mumbled. "We're not trying to cause problems." Too late for that, Jeff. That same night, the HOA board called an emergency session. I wasn't invited, but Sharon was. She went as a guest observer, and when she came back, her eyes were gleaming. "Well, they're imploding," she said. Karen lost it, full meltdown, screamed at half the board, threatened to fire people, which, by the way, she can't legally do. They realize the loan is real? They do now. And the bank's already asking for updated zoning maps to reassess the value, which means the city will see the fake maps Karen submitted. It was beautiful. Not just revenge, tactical justice. I wasn't done. Samantha helped me file a civil suit, not just against the HOA, but against Karen personally. Charges: trespassing, fraud, property damage, and unlawful impersonation of a public authority. We held a press conference in front of the courthouse. Yes, a press conference. Local TV crews came. Sharon spoke like she was running for office. Scott stood behind me like a bodyguard. I read a short statement. I bought my house to escape HOA rule. Instead, they tried to absorb me through lies and intimidation. Now the people who thought they owned my property are answering to the law, and to me, their lender. The clip made the evening news. Again. I was becoming something of a cult figure among disgruntled homeowners. People sent me emails, gifts. One guy from Florida mailed me a pair of custom socks with "Not Your COA" stitched across the ankles. Then came the cherry on top. A whistleblower. Her name was Jill, former assistant secretary of the HOA. She messaged me through the website, anonymous at first, then agreed to meet in person. Middle-aged, anxious, thick glasses, and very, very done with Karen's bullshit. She's been cooking the books, Jill told us. Moving HOA funds into discretionary outreach projects, then using that money for personal reimbursements. You have proof. I made backups before I quit. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. Samantha took the files straight to the city's code enforcement office and the Attorney General's Consumer Fraud Division. Suddenly, Karen had more than a zoning problem. She had a criminal one. By the end of the week, Crescent Trails HOA was served with a formal audit notice. Karen's name was on the front page. Under it, in bold, were the words, "Pending investigation, financial misconduct, unauthorized land activity, misuse of authority." The fallout was immediate. HOA members started resigning. The Facebook smear campaign disappeared overnight. Someone took down all the compliance hotline signs around the neighborhood. Then, in the ultimate act of defeat, Karen sold her house. No fanfare, no goodbyes. One moving truck, gone by Sunday. I didn't celebrate, not yet, because there was one last hearing left, one final verdict, and I wanted it on the record. The final hearing was held on a rainy Tuesday, typical Texas storm, all flash and thunder, no subtlety. I arrived early, umbrella useless against the sideways wind, my dress shoes soaked through before I even crossed the courthouse steps. It felt appropriate somehow, a full circle return to the same courtroom where this mess had first gotten teeth. Samantha met me inside, dry as ever, hair pinned back and files tucked under one arm like a damn scalpel. She gave me a nod. "You ready?" I've been ready since they stepped into my kitchen without permission. The hearing wasn't long. Judge Lambert presided again, just as stoic, just as unimpressed with Karen's existence as last time. This time, though, she wasn't there. No sharp blazer, no smug glance, just her attorney Linda, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. We presented the evidence one final time. Trespassing, confirmed. Fraudulent HOA notices, verified. Unauthorized use of city infrastructure processes, documented and filed. And then came Jill's files, receipts, reimbursement forms, internal memos, all referencing community beautification projects that somehow ended up paying for Karen's landscaping, a weekend retreat in Fredericksburg, and even a Peloton subscription. Labeled as wellness outreach, Judge Lambert didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He ruled that Crescent Trails HOA had no legal authority over my property. All fines issued were invalid and unenforceable. The trespassing event constituted a criminal offense, subject to further civil penalties. Karen Westbrook, acting in her capacity as president, was personally liable for damages due to fraudulent misrepresentation and illegal access. He banged the gavel once and said, "Case closed," just like that. It wasn't even noon. Samantha turned to me, grinning. "You want to go get breakfast tacos and a copy of that judgment printed in poster size?" "I want them screen printed on a blanket," I said. For winter. The days that followed were strange. Quiet. No signs on my lawn. No mysterious envelopes. No HOA foot soldiers in polos pacing around like land surveyors with a grudge. The silence was almost suspicious at first, like the pause before another punch. But it never came. Karen's house went on the market that same week. She never came back. Rumor was she moved out of state. Arizona, maybe. Someplace hot, dry, and full of gated communities. The Crescent Trails HOA, still around technically, but gutted. New leadership, new limits. They held a vote on reforming their charter and passed a clause that explicitly barred expansion beyond existing zoning lines. No more annexation momentum. No more empire building. They even invited me to a meeting. I politely declined. Scott and I held a barbecue the weekend after the ruling. Sharon baked a cake shaped like the judge's gavel. Someone brought sparklers. There was a toast, not just to the win, but to property boundaries, paperwork, and the simple joy of telling people legally to get off your lawn. Not Your HOA is still online. We updated it with resources, downloadable guides, sample cease and desist letters, and a list of lawyers who aren't afraid of suburban tyrants. It gets a few dozen hits a week, sometimes more when someone like me decides they've had enough. I still keep the sign in my yard, same words, same bold typeface, Not Your HOA, because I paid for this house. I maintain it. I built a life inside these walls. And no one, not Karen, not a clipboard, not a fraudulent committee, gets to walk in uninvited again.